Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we're going to be checking out some tracks from an act named Omoinotake. The first of these, titled雨と喪失. And if we switch it over to here, I'm checking these out on behalf of Car 16K, so I'm looking forward to checking out 3 of these songs today from this act, and we're going to listen through them from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. Live performance. Solid intro with the keys as well. I think there's also 2 percussionists, a drummer and someone on the shakers, so that's kind of cool. And just to sort of interrupt, I think this is雨と喪失, if I'm not mistaken, so apologies for that. It's kind of wild to not have a guitar as a focus. Feels a bit rough to just have the saxophone player sitting there doing nothing. It would have been cool to give, maybe they have them an instrument as well. Maybe they could have used the shakers or something like that. Fantastic lead. Phenomenal harmonies there. Yeah, fantastic transition to the alt lead there. The sound of the bell tree is so pure, you know? Great use of dynamic range here. Fantastic. Great end of the bell curve there in regards to dynamics with the cymbal shimmers as well. Good job. Fantastic. So that was, if I'm not mistaken, that was Ame to Soushitsu. So in terms of my thoughts on this track, which apparently Ame to Soushitsu is Rain and Loss translated into English. Does this sound like rain and loss? Yeah, I don't understand the language natively, but I think that you can kind of infer a sense of heavy weight of the emotion from the piece in general there. In terms of what I like about this track, 3 things I appreciate about it. One is the saxophone solo. I mean, granted, it took a while to get to the point where we had those leads come in, but I feel that they're very fragrant, effortlessly sort of navigating the various scales and sort of chords that were in the background and any sort of like switches or little kind of like spanners thrown into the works harmonically. It was effortless, and there was such a sort of a sense of warmth and a glow that came from the tone of that instrument and amongst everything going on with the keys, the bass and the percussion and the drums. I also appreciate the vocal performance. It had this relative consistency to it that almost sort of, I think, stylistically inferred that even though we were going through some times that we were maybe struggling with, that everything was going to end up all right. We had a nice sort of soothing tone and texture to our voice there. The melodies, they weren't super duper in your face or vibrant. They were more sort of caring and personable. There was again, a similar warmth to what we had with the saxophone, don't get me wrong. There was a sense of care and love about it, just with the way we sort of expressed ourselves. But it was also kind of showed a sense of humility, which was interesting in the sense that we really just didn't seem like we were trying to sort of like stab at the listener for their attention. We were more with how kind of reserved we were in certain situations, inviting the listener to listen to us. I think finally, just in regards to the actual performance, like the live take of it, I appreciate that we can see them all playing together. I understand that this shouldn't be a particularly incredible or controversial thing, arguably, but it is rare to have live performances where people just play incredibly well together. There's a fantastic chemistry between the people on the stage. Like all the instruments sounded great together. It wasn't just the production, it was the actual chemistry between the members and the way they sort of fed off each other and allowed room for each other, and things were nicely sort of niched and amalgamated within the composition as well. And I think that I made a comment about there not being a guitar, and I think what happened was the vocals, the saxophone, and the keys kind of took up that mid to high mantle, whereas the drums and bass were more sort of groove oriented. The basses with their 5-string was very comfortable across that range, never overstepped. The drummer sticking to those chord note accents, which occasionally 8th and 16ths. But yeah, a lot of flurry and fascination was coming from those main focal points with the keys, just adding a nice sort of sense of sort of stylish sophistication to it. Now, after that awesome track, we have Ikuokukonen, which apparently means hundreds of millions of light years. This is track number 2. It's got a total of 103 million plays, which is absolutely incredible. In case you're wondering why we're listening to the Spotify version of this, I think we were concerned that the video might get copyright blocked, which is valid, it could. I like that we tried a key change, but I'm not sure what the context of it was. Okay, so it was a bridge. It's very pleasant and upbeat. Oh, that fill was tight though. I'm going to make a comment here really quickly because I'm going to try not to interrupt this too much more. It's just I can hear that the vocalist is very high in their range and is like kind of sound to it. That's not me critiquing it. You could just tell that they're kind of higher in their range. And I think that that's kind of fascinating because it allows, because they're directly limiting themselves from going higher, like for example, from going into the mixed voice or falsetto or something like that. They're allowing the brass elements and everything else to kind of go above them. And I just appreciate that we're respecting the boundaries there in regards to niching things. But the drums here are phenomenal, dude. Yeah, I mean, it's inoffensive. Bro, I used the falsetto at the end. So you hear what I mean about that comment I was making about that kind of getting into the top of his like head voice there? It was a deliberate extra tier that he could go into if he wanted to. And he's deliberately staging himself so that he doesn't go further than that, because otherwise it kind of gives the game away a bit early. But this was Ikuokukonen, titled or translated as Hundreds of Millions of Light Years, as I understand it. Now, what do I think this track is about? I assume by the Aishiteru at the end, I love you. I think Aishiteru, if I'm not mistaken, is I love you in Japanese. I could be wrong. I think that it's a track about the love transcending the covering the distance there, like loving each other across different galaxies or alternate dimensions or something like that. I'm not sure, but either way, this was clearly one of their biggest singles. I appreciate the accessibility of it. I think that there are some interesting chord progression and key choices here that are a little bit spicy, but they handle it in a way where it's almost a bit of a kind of sticks at you a little bit, not in a negative way, but you notice that you're like, oh, that seems kind of like a bit of a movement there. And then you go back into that major tone. It's like, oh, I get it. We've had the context of the chorus, and then we're back on the road to continuing to be able to sort of, I assume, appreciate that love. So I think that in terms of the actual, like the way it's written, with like a lack of dedicated alternate lead elements aside from the vocals for the most part, but with interesting choices structurally and compositionally, I feel like there's a lot to appreciate in a way that allows us to still be catchy and more of a poppy single where I can imagine people singing along to stuff at the concerts. I think the second thing I appreciate about that track is the drums, the use of the different snare and tom fills and everything like that. It's just so dexterous and illustrious. There is so much to appreciate in regards to the finesse of the kit. It's not just that we had that really sick sort of drum fill at one point earlier on the piece where it went from like one side to the other. It was very satisfying following that part along. But later in the interlude section, we really do celebrate. We really do celebrate the possibilities on this instrument. And it's just innately fascinating and satisfying to hear the entire kit being used in a track where very few other lead elements are really kind of trying to stick their nose out too much. It's mostly supportive of the vocals. But I'm glad that as an instrument that is not melodic, you know, I was having a look to see if drums were monophonic or polyphonic. They are monophonic, even though they're technically membranophonic, because they have a membrane that is used to make the sound. The final comment that I want to make about this track in regards to things I appreciate about it is that you have the brass. Now, I'm basically pointing out certain instruments at this point, but I feel like a lot of the fundamentals are covered. It's not like we're going, hey, did they competently put together some chords in the key signature? You know, did they actually play their instruments properly? A band at Omoinotake's caliber, they know how to do their thing, both in a live and a studio situation. So it's mostly looking, what instruments did we choose? Part of it is that, and why? And so I think the brass is used primarily to sort of celebrate the situation we have, that love that we have with each other. And I love how bombastic and vivacious it is. It really is trying to get us in the mood to be able to appreciate and feel uplifted by the situation. It is a celebration of being able to say to someone that you love them, of having that connection to that person no matter how far away they are. I think it's a really glorious thing. And I just like that that celebration is carried not just potentially from the lyrics, I'm not sure, but definitively the sound of the track, the trials and tribulations you go through in regards to the tones within the harmonies, and lots of other factors that are worth mentioning here, but I'll keep out of it just for now to be more succinct. Now, the final track for today is titled Utsusemi, Empty-Headed Cicada. Now, this is the track we're going to have a bit more of a talk about at the end. This is the one we want to focus on, but we're going to listen through the track first. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm really sorry. Pretty sure this is the one we're going to have a little more of a look at. The call and response with those keys was nice on the right side. This is very different from the previous two tracks though. Great parallel there. Great warmth within their synth pad textures there. I like how they oscillate. And fascinating use of vocal chops as well. And the saxophone returns. Sorry to interrupt. That was a masterful navigation of the parallel major going back down to the minor there. It's just the peaks and troughs of the journey you see in the video, you know, being in love and having that connection, and then suddenly, you know, it just goes badly, you know, with the tears and everything like that. But the saxophone showcases that connection to it and really well. Boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. Almost sort of like pseudo reggaeton. See, this just makes me want to go back to Japan, man. I love the cities. I love the architecture, dude. I mean, I'm aware, like, there's different parts of Japan and everything like that, but I love the cities. I just wish I hadn't gone in the middle of summer when it was 40 degrees. It would have been cool to have gone to Japan when it was a little bit less hot, but still, I had a phenomenal time. Anyways, enough about me. We're talking about this track from an act named Omoinotake, titled Utsusemi, which is empty-headed cicada, if I understand it. What do we think that this track is about? Really quickly, I think it's about really needing that person to sort of commit to the raw feelings that they have for you, trying to sort of get them out, being sort of like true to yourself about how you feel about that person. There's a lot more to it. Honestly, I found myself more enjoying my time exploring the groove and feel this pace with the percussion, even though it was relatively minimalist in comparison to some of the other tracks I've heard. But I think the vocals within this piece are wonderful. They're not super complicated, but they're confident, and we show solid vocal technique in a headed chest voice. And I think that we intrinsically understand how to navigate some of the complicated chord progressions and parallel majors and minors and the chromaticisms and stuff like that in a way which is very meaningful. I think that we don't leave this piece feeling like we have been shortchanged in regards to the actual effort put into make it captivating, compelling. You know, we're putting our 100% into the work on the mic. And so I think with that in mind, very well sung. When we go up into the head voice or like our upper register in the chorus section, it really does sound like we're calling out, and there's an interesting contrast in the intensity between the verse and chorus parts that I feel is it's basically what you want from this type of music. You not only want contrast for the sake of diversity within a piece, but also the different messages that go on, and context often is best when it's not as in your face as maybe the main hook line. Instrumentally, I mean, this track is 3 minutes 51, and I think that it does the fundamentals really well. It's not super complicated. There are parts in here that I appreciate structurally, like the saxophone solo. I also appreciate the simplicity of the drum parts within the chorus section, simply that kind of 8th note, 16th note, kind of reggaetonish kind of bump, bum, 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 bum. It's a very kind of calm, sort of like, it's a cherry sounding beat. But it's not super hyper and upbeat and everything like that. It's just more kind of boom, boom, boom. You nod your head into it kind of sort of step to it, and it's fun. But it also, I think, in a sense, it kind of represents the situation where we're simply walking through life trying to figure out the answers to these things, including love. And so it's almost like take a step forward, each beat, da dun 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 da dun. And I kind of dig that we're almost adding a sense of pace for the listener, maybe suggested, not just from the lyrics, but also from the groove of the music. So I like that there's multiple use cases for that. The bass line is more reserved in this. I think the bass guitar is more sort of like following the root notes and sort of giving that time to sort of like shine. I think that there was a fluffiness to a lot of the synth pads and textures within this piece that was really kind of like it was very gentle, and I think it was almost trying to sort of like surround you, kind of like being inside during a storm, like in a warm room with like the windows shut, or maybe the windows open, you can hear the rain or something like that. And you have these strings as well, which had a sense of emotional depth and weight to it that represent and reinforce some of those core major and minor triads in there. I also appreciate just having the keys as a more simple texture here. I like that we have had, Cynthia and Alice like more electric key bits maybe in previous parts, but here we simply have a piano with little sparkles and shimmers on the right side and call and responses at the end of tails of certain parts as well, just to kind of let you feel not only like the rain is falling, but just as a nice transitional device melodically. I think that's really sweet, and it's filtered in a way so that it's very kind of nice and light. I think all round, it's a tight effort. There's no weak points in regard to the actual performance itself. There is dynamic range to the piece. It's not the same loudness all the time. We take away the drums occasionally, allow things to float. Other times, the chord note groove is the main factor, and we stick with that. Getting back to the saxophone solo, I think that was tremendously well done in part because, as I mentioned at the time, it is not only just a really competent technical performance, but what it does is it listens to the progressions and all the movements from the accompaniment in the background, knowing it's got this much real estate, but also understanding that it is a complicated song. Like there are some movements there with some of those triads and extended notes there where we go up and we're major and it's suddenly fluttering back down. We go to that minor in a way where we're almost like a bird coming back down to roost after maybe it's flown a little bit too high. It's a very interesting experience to listen to a musician who is able to navigate those chromatics and semitones in a way which is incredibly uplifting and impressive. And it's just, yeah, we smashed it. I liked that saxophone solo in there. I think that it was nice to shake things up and have an alternative lead layer as well from the vocals, which we're quite familiar with at this point. I think generally, in regards to the structure, it's just the theme, where the theme overall, the main progressions, the suggestions of the extensions, the jazzy infusions with the kind of the reggaeton drums and everything like that, it's more supposed to be kind of like a peaceful chance to be introspective about the situation that you find yourself in, whether it is love or maybe simply we are just floating in our own minds. I'm not sure, but it's a really enlightening experience, and it's just nice to listen to outside of anything else. It's very, very accessible and approachable. I hear this and I think, what can we do to improve it in order to be able to sort of like suggest more of like the lyrics to the person? I think that you'll get more of an understanding of it from the nuance of being a native speaker. But at the same time, I just think the use of those softer, fluffier textures there, the groove kind of wanting us to sort of dance alongside it, but I think also just trying to be sort of a more of a catchier track and a little bit less analog or conservative than other songs. It's well done, and I don't really have any complaints about the way that it was written or its main sort of melodic motifs. I think a lot of it is sort of sound design in regards to the different functions of certain instruments, but it has cohesion and chemistry. And then I think finally, in regards to the studio production for this track, I just think it's tremendous. It's just a really awesome song where we have ourselves just commercial grade vocals, pads, keys, bass, drums, saxophone recorded in like equivalent to $1 million studio from what I can tell. I don't know. It just the audio engineering and music production for a lot of Japanese stuff, it's just ridiculous, and it's been since the land of time. It's just wonderful, man. And so the niching of stuff and the increasing spectrum without any resonant frequencies, stuff surrounding you in the headphones, the little twinkles and movements of slight automation with the panning, the dynamic range to it. Things weren't the same loudness all the time. It had a sense of life and it could breathe. But it was also nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression limiting was handled. I mean, effectively, moving into the conclusion section, I've reviewed 3 tracks from Omoinotake today, titled雨と喪失, Ikuokukonen, as well as Utsusemi, and I enjoyed my time with all 3 of these, and thanks to Kara16 for these, and hopefully you enjoyed it too. If you did, please go show this band some love via the various social medias and the YouTube page and Spotify, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.